The midseason madness has come and gone, and with it another title win, this time for the Atlanta Reign. We had some fantastic games, a lot of hype with the return of Lan, and some disappointments. But how did each team do? Are Reign unstoppable? Are APAC frauds? Let's see. We'll go in order of who was taken out. First off, the Soul Infernal. Man, I had some hope for these guys. They looked very dominant in APAC, but I guess I can't trust a team that lost to the Dynasty. We'll start off with the good. They honestly looked pretty competitive in their series. The Mayhem game was ridiculously close, and some of the Houston maps were also pretty close. Their rushes and dives were fairly crisp, and they showed decent macro. Maga popped off on everything he touched, Zest had a lot of great moments on Tracer, and Emma3 hard carried when he wasn't on Sombra, which we will talk about. They will still be top tier in APAC when they return, but what are some issues? Well, one that may surprise people is that I think the support line of Infernal got diffed. Fixa has never really been impressive to me, and he didn't play very well, but Scoot was also not having the same impact as usual. He wasn't hitting a lot of sleeves, his bio nades were mainly used passively, and he seemed overwhelmed. The whole support line also had somewhat similar issues to, dare I say it, the Shock. They split up a lot, which can work in some scenarios, like against the Sombra, but Fixa definitely has some positioning issues, and it was very easy to isolate each one and pick them off, which happened constantly throughout series. Fixa did pop off on Lucio though. MN3 on Sombra was weird. Sometimes he was carrying the team and popping off, but he also had a lot of like, oh, what the fuck are you doing rounds, where he would do literally nothing and EMP nobody. His EMPs were fucking awful. Pretty poorly timed and hard to follow up on a lot of the time, and sometimes he just didn't hit anyone. His neutral was okay though. His Zest was good. He had a lot of great moments, but he did underperform and lost a bunch of key 1v1s to Checkmate and Happy and just didn't have a lot of impact. But overall, the Infernal just played fairly passively. They tended to not dive in without someone on the enemy team making a mistake or without ult to back them up. And the same more or less went for the Rush. Again, not the worst performance. Mag is still a beast and an MVP contender, and the Bat DPS line and Scoot are still great. But their passiveness and mechanical diffs on most of their roles held them back. Next up, the Hangzhou Spark. Hey, at least APAC got one win. Again, we'll start with the good. Shy went off this entire tournament and was easily their best player. His Sombra leveled the fuck up. He was constantly finding hacks and grabbing EMPs, was probably the best at scouting out the enemy translocator and destroying it than anyone else. His improvement was gargantuan, though still nowhere near lip level. He was also inconsistent, disappearing or being countered for some maps. He definitely needs work, but he improved a lot, and his Hanzo was hard carrying as well. Monk was also really good as well. He actually outpaced ult charge against his opposition pretty often and had a fuck ton of good sleeps. But I think he's still behind most of the NA flex supports. Gucci was great on Winston and held up against some great tanks like Smurf and someone, though his RAM left a bit to be desired. And Lee was good on a variety of heroes, managing to diff Checkmate especially hard on the Tracer. Their dives were still great when they got in a roll, but there were still negatives. Langso was probably the worst main support in this tournament. He was a glorified Brig one-trick, and Ray refused to put him on Lucio for whatever reason, even playing Zen over it. This also really hurt their dives as they were very slow. He was pretty obviously the weak link, and if he's bad enough that Ray doesn't trust him on Lucio, that limits them a lot. As much as it hurts me to say it, Leave got outperformed a bit. His main Reaper were alright, and his Tracer was good but outperformed by Decay and Stalker. He's still fantastic at it, and did show this a lot during the tournament, being arguably the top performer from the team statistically. He was fucking insanely good against Mayhem, though. And then their rush needs a lot of work. It's pretty fucking awful. No Lucio or real group heal. No macro understanding of what they need to do. Gucci being mid on ramp. It's all over the place. But they really need to start putting likes on Lucio. Brig is awful with this comp. And overall, they just got outmatched now that they can't just out-mechanic their opponent. Their support line was probably the worst in this tournament, though Monk did have a really good tournament, I thought. Gucci is great, but when the other tanks are fearless, someone, Smurf, and even Mag, it's less impressive. Shy Leave did well this tournament and tried their best throughout, but it wasn't enough against the top DPS lines in NA. Valiant effort by these guys, but it was just not enough to break through, but they did pop off against Florida again. Next up, the Boston Uprising. These guys disappointed. They did manage to beat Spark convincingly, but Spark weren't especially a strong team this tournament, and they did get shat on by Houston and Florida, even though people were expecting them to be fairly equal to Houston. So, like always, we'll start with the good. Decay was ridiculous this whole tournament. He looked like their best player on the Tracer and kept things interesting and won fights by himself, even when Boston were getting rolled. Twilight showed he may have the best mechanics on Ana in the world. Some of those sleeps were out of this world. Birdring still looked strong consistently, and Boston definitely had some great dives. But it's just messy. The rotations and overall coordination were not strong at all, and they relied on clutch plays from Decay or Lee Jae Gon to help finish things off. They had weird comps like the Doomfist on 8 point that does almost nothing, or there were Mantra comps where it's clear they want to dive, but also want to play pseudo-rush. Genji into Mei Ramatra. It's just a mess. Lee Shagan didn't even play particularly well this tournament, and Boston switching between Izayaki and Twilight did not help that much. Birding was very solid at times, and was the only one breathing life into this team, but he was outclassed by Happy and Merritt. Smurf was also overly passive at times and overextended other times. Pretty shoddy Winston play from him, quite frankly. I was not very impressed, especially compared to what we're used to, and his Ramatra and Doom aren't anything special either. And most of all, they're just unable to play dive and play super confidently. They have the mechanics, but it's pretty clear their lack of a flex DPS is hurting, and while Decay is cracked out of his mind on Tracer, Boston bends over backwards with their comps to keep him on there. And their rush comps were real messy. It's something they're going to need to work on, especially with Dive getting an indirect nerf with Kaz debuffs, and Boston are still a good team. They're easily top 5, but they're very inconsistent, poorly coached, and their poor team building is biting them now. They're still stacked to the brim with talent, but they have issues, and I hope they sort it out before next tournament. Next up, our third place team, the Florida Mayhem. What a performance from them. They did do a funny against Spark, but made up for it by beating Infernal and Uprising and making Houston sweat. And what a fun team to watch. Their roster is super flexible, and they have a great coaching staff, so they experimented with a ton of team comps and became masters at rush-style comps. Probably the best in the league at those at the moment. Their macro and aggression was extremely good, and they caught teams off guard with those, especially Boston and Houston. They did get a bit over-aggressive, but On an individual level, someone was a fucking beast. Whether it was Winston, Ramadra, Reinhardt, even Diva and Doomfist, he was a top performer. He did have some issues where he'd overstep and be punished for it, and I wasn't a fan of some of his ult usage, but as of right now, I can't think of anyone who's more valuable on that tank position and who is even better. Someone is an actually ridiculous beast, and Florida basically robbed a bank by getting him. RuPaul also performed really well. Charang had some ridiculous performances, even if he did get caught out a lot on Lucio. His mechanics are ridiculous. Checkmate also came clutch on the Tracer a bunch. Really solid stuff. But if they're so good, why'd they lose? Well, few reasons. Merritt was very hot and cold. He had some games where he'd pop off and play a really good Sombra, and some games where he'd disappear and even make me go think, what the fuck is he doing? He was horrendous against Spark. He did have some great moments, and I think he's really good still, but this was not his best weekend. But otherwise, I think it's kind of a mechanics dip from other teams. Florida has amazing coaching and some really elite players. Other than Charang and someone, I think there was a non-insignificant gap between the DPS of the Mayhem and Spark, Rain, and Houston, especially on those dive heroes. You can see it come out a bit on pure dive maps, where Florida generally had a disadvantage. Honestly, I think part of the reason Florida had so many wacky strategies and leaned into the rush was because they were unconfident in their dive. You could just see it when they played Spark and Houston. I don't want to take anything away from them though. Checkmate had a great tournament, but it's rough when you're up against Stalker, Happy, and Leave. Checkmate had a great tournament, but it's rough when you're up against Stalker, Happy, and Leave. And again, as good as their macro was, they did have a tendency to get over-aggressive and are caught out on an individual level, mostly. But good Sombras like Pelican and Shy punished them with EMPs and really smart hacks. The aggression worked their strength a lot and paid off, but there were some key moments where someone would be caught out and punished. Mayhem are a great team, and frankly, I have them in the same tier as Houston, but they have some mechanical gaps and some things to iron out. Next up, our runners-up, the Houston Outlaws. Insanely good team. They have some of the best players in the league. They have clean dives and a fantastic backline, but more specifically, Happy popped the fuck off this tournament. He was unreal, and he's elevated himself to one of the best DPS in the game at the moment for me. His Sombra is really good. His Tracer was disgusting. He hit some unreal sticks against Rain, and was probably the main reason they made that game so close. And his Hanzo and Widow were still top tier. He was incredible. Fearless also played one hell of a clean monkey. Pelican also looked a lot better on the Sombra, despite the roles being basically swapped. But he did hold his own, and even kind of nasty. And his Tracer and May were still good. Violet was consistently good in the Kiriko and Brig, and their macro understanding of the comp and general confidence really kicked in. I don't think they had the best macro, but their mechanics and roster are enough to kick in, and they were still really good in that regard as well. However, there were a few negatives. Individually, Shu had a stinker of a tournament. Yeah, his stinkers are still probably above the average Ana in the league, but he was not finding any of the same value Fielder or even Twilight or RuPaul were getting through their sleeps and bionades. He was not bad per se, but he did not perform at the level he needed to, and it really, really hurt Outlaws against Rain in the finals especially. He's still a fantastic player, and he'll bounce back though. Violet also had some weird decision-making, but he was still really good. Definitely a top contender for Role Star. But I really do think their macro needs work. There was a stream where far away, and some old Shungdu Hunters guys were watching, and they were mauling at Outlaws because they kept failing to follow up on EMPs due to a lack of focus fire. And that definitely showed. They had some nice dives, but a lot of their games came down to how many pulse bombs can Happy stick or how hard can Violet and Fearless pop off. Their mechanics really are that good that a lack of macro makes up for it. And also, a small note, but I never really saw people peel for their supports the way someone in Donghack are always in position to do. Fearless was just super aggressive to the point of being greedy and caught out for it. He was still probably the best Winston in the tournament, and he was shut down a lot. Outlaws are still a top 2 team, and I don't think they're a super team on the likes of Reign. And I can see Florida and even maybe Boston taking a series of two off them on a good day. But ultimately, there is a gap between their supports and DPS and Reign, though especially in this meta. And as good as Happy is, Pelican is still nowhere near Lip, and Stalker, Chio, and Fielder are just unreal. Reign is still a very tall mountain to climb, and unless there's a drastic meta change, it'll be tough. Finally, the Reign. What else is there really to say? Stalker and Lip are easily the best DPS line in the world. Lip changes the entire flow of the game on the Sombra, and Reign build all of their strategies around him. And Stalker is just unreal. He does not miss a pulse, and getting 40% of his team's final blows on such a stacked team is ludicrous, and he did that consistently. And their synergy is unreal. No backline stands a chance against these guys. On the flip side, they have easily the best support line in the world. Chio and Fielder are immortal. They can survive constant EMPs with almost no help. They're just simply unreal, and the best of their heroes in the world. Vigilante also popped off on that one map he played in, considering it was against the second best team in the world on their map pick, and Donghack was feeding. Donghack and Hawk have also looked pretty good, easily the weak spots in this team, but they're nowhere bad. Both of them have some aggression issues. Donghack overextends, he gets caught out a lot, but the Reign are just so stacked it doesn't matter. And Hawk takes a crazy amount of damage, but they both look decent and have held their own on a stacked team. And on top of that, we meme on Gator, but the synergy and macro of this team is ridiculous. They know where to be at all times, they know how to peel, when to dive, and how to execute. It's beautiful to watch, honestly, even if they do rely on individual plays by Stalker and Lip a lot. This is probably as close to a perfect team as we'll see since 2021 Shanghai. The macro execution is absolutely ridiculous, and the players are all superstars. Lip Overwatch. There are a few issues, though, and my only real issue is that Reign's entire strategy seems to be built around Lip and his Sombra. Whenever he gets off it, they struggle hard. Not that they're a Sombra one-trick team, and I'm sure they're great at everything else as well, but I can see them dropping, to the level of, everyone else if the meta shifts away from Sombra. But that does not seem to be the case, though, and I expect Reign to continue their dominance going into next stage. It's a hype event and some great games. I'll be doing a review of the other teams, most likely if I find something interesting. Maybe some VOD reviews? Let me know if you want that in the comments. Thanks for watching.